Hey everyone, welcome back to the exam preparation video series for SC-100, Microsoft Cybersecurity Architect. I'm Peter Detender and I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer. In this episode, we'll focus on designing security operations, identity, and compliance capabilities. Here is a list of the different skills for the objectives we'll be covering. As mentioned in the previous episode, these are some of the skills you may or may not be tested on. We will not necessarily cover every skill in this video, but you should definitely be familiar with each skill before taking the exam. Given the extensive amount of information on this slide, as well as the next one, consider pausing the video or take a screenshot. This slide actually lists up all the skills for the security operations part of the exam. Where then this slide lists up the different skills you could get tested on out of the privileged access domain, as well as around regulatory compliance. In the first series, I briefly positioned XDR and SIEM as two possible scenarios to assist with detecting and responding to security incidents, mainly talking about Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Sentinel here. While the exam is typically not really requiring you to perform actual tasks in a live Azure environment, make sure you know how to execute this. Here is an overview of 8 critical checks, which could be relevant to understand what they actually entail. When designing for security operations such as XDR and SIEM, as discussed in the previous slide, having robust logging and auditing setup is a vital part of that overall security operations task that you need to perform. Make sure you are familiar with most, if not all, tasks listed here for both categories, which means you need to know the tools, you need to know the mechanism to set it up, the design architecture dependencies, and more like that. This is, I would say, a busy slide, so you might consider again pausing the video for a bit and really studying the mechanics of the design. The key message here for the exam objective is thinking broader than just using Azure, what we here describe as unified operations. Know that solutions such as Defender for Cloud, Sentinel, Azure Log Analytics, Azure Monitor, and other ones allow centralizing information coming in from hybrid clouds. Building on the multi-environment aspect from the previous slide, it is vital to understand how to design your SOR, Security Orchestration Automated Response, platform approach as well. The SOR architecture relies on different workflow components. Several are actually listed here, both again within Azure and broader cloud platforms. Know where these solutions fit in your cybersecurity designs and when to choose what. SOR means automation. Automation relies on workflows. Workflows allow you to perform threat hunting and threat intelligence using a tool like Sentinel, for example. So see, that's what we mean by designing your solutions. How do you face an incident? How do you recover from it? And what solutions do you put in place to actually help you with going through that task? This brings me to the second topic in this session, identity and access management. From a high-level perspective, you should be familiar with the following solutions for identity and access management. Understanding the different identity architectures, where each of them is running, what are the key characteristics, but also what are their limitations. The different Microsoft Identity solution design from the previous slide are the security baseline for access to any sort of architecture and infrastructure, no matter where and how it runs. IaaS, infrastructure as a service, PaaS, platform as a service, running in Azure, or even running outside of Azure. Also, think about the identity lifecycle, the logging, the auditing, access privileges, and the impact they have. As you know, Entra ID provides extensive features to protect and automate identity processes on a scale. Millions of users relying on Entra ID credentials every single day across the globe to authenticate corporate and consumer applications. In this slide, we're reminding you about Zero Trust, where Entra ID provides solutions such as conditional access, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and honestly several other to work towards that Zero Trust ready environment. One additional aspect of identity governance and securing your platform is keeping that eye on external identities. This can be business partner users, such as a vendor or partner account, known as B2B business to business, or it can point towards citizen or consumer account scenarios, known as B2C. And as always, every design comes with a few recommended best practices. So here, it shouldn't be surprising, we have several of them in relation to authentication and authorization. Now, while you should not expect a literal question on the exam asking which of this list of options are best practices, you should obviously be familiar with them, knowing how to apply them, and again, what is the impact on your security operations overall. We already touched on the aspect of hybrid identity a little bit earlier, but what this slide wants to emphasize on is how to harden your on-premises as well as hybrid Active Directory domain services. As always, implement least privilege permissions models. Integrate and validate domain controller hardening using, for example, Microsoft Security benchmark templates. Keep your security network boundaries in place, and also avoid lateral movement security threats, where you would administer a trusted host from a non-protected or less secure device. That would obviously not be an acceptable design architecture. Repeating the message here once more, continuously validate the security state of your Active Directory domain services by, for example, checking privileges, securing your management hosts, and overall keeping your domain controllers as secure as possible. This slide here is one of my favorite slides. Why? Because it's positioning privileged roles and how to correctly design for them. Again, I would recommend you pausing this slide once more and becoming really familiar with the described scenarios on the left-hand side, as well as the higher-level architectural enterprise access model. If you're wondering how to put everything I mentioned so far in place, let me remind you about 4-stage roadmap, where each phase has specific tasks as well as solutions to put in place. Make sure you become familiar with the details of each of those 4 phases for the exam. Identity and access means identities, but access can also be granted in different ways, by, for example, sharing credentials, storing connection strings, and alike secretly information. Shouldn't be a surprise that to really understand the ins and outs of Azure Key Vault, because it's really the recommended design building block for storing secrets in a secret store. Another aspect of designing privileged access strategy is understanding the different steps involved here to the left and how to rely on entitlement management in Entra ID to help with that. While the exam is primarily focusing on designing, don't be surprised to see the word create here on the slide, and make sure you are familiar with the actual steps on how to integrate it. The access packages from the previous slide are actually the smaller building block in the broader entitlement management design phases mentioned on this slide here. You need to know them, understand them, being able to manage them, and so on. And that's really what the exam skill expects. Next, you cannot design a proper identity and access layer if you don't bring review management into the story. Reviews are the responsibility of any user, not just managers or administrative users. Having too many permissions you no longer need could become a huge security risk. One way to control identity access is using a privileged access workstation. Know what it's designed for and where in a broader architecture it could nicely fit in. Compliance management is another design factor in your cybersecurity architecture. Within the Microsoft tools, this mainly means using Azure Purview and/or M365 Purview. While a bit more outside of Azure specifically, make sure you are familiar with possibilities and design aspects in Azure as well as M365. The same here goes for Microsoft Priva, a cloud solution currently still in preview, but part of the XM objectives, helping with privacy risk management. Now, talking about compliance and its relationship with security, it's really what this slide brings as the main message. Again, pause the video if needed and spend enough time understanding what each bullet point on this slide actually represents. This brings us to one of the last slides in this section, validating platform compliance using benchmarks from within Defender for Cloud regulatory compliance features. Before we close this section, a last reminder to also understand what MITRE ATT&CK is about and how it can benefit your organization, where to find the necessary information regarding attack classifications, and another reminder about understanding the capabilities of, for example, conditional access as part of the broader Zero Trust strategy, as we already discussed at the start of this section. To recap, in this episode, we discussed how to design solutions for security operations, how to design solutions for securing privileged access, how to design solutions for regulatory compliance. Remember, this group accounts for 30 to 35% of the exam, so keep in mind when you're preparing for the exam. Thank you for watching episode 2 on designing security operations, identity, and compliance capabilities. Be sure to join us for episode 3, where we cover designing security solutions for infrastructure.